Okay, in this video, we are going to talk about names fields, readers fields, and authors fields. So let's go. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about names, authors, and readers fields. It's part of security in DocOva. Seek out, I'll link once we have it done, but a deeper dive on security in DocOva and everywhere where it's implemented, so you can see how security in DocOva works. But just suffice for now, on forms, as we go through form design elements, there's special fields in DocOva called a names field and an authors field and a readers field types that you can use to enhance the security of your application. And so why would you want to do that? So just quickly, a reason why you would want to do that is that, for example, in an application, you can have people who are managers of that app. That means they could go into the design elements of the app, or they can create documents and they can see all the documents in the application, and they could edit all the documents in the application, regardless of who created them. But then you can also have editors, and editors, they can't go into the design or the administration of the application, but they can create content or documents in the application, and they can edit anybody else's documents in the application. And then there's authors, and authors can create documents in an application, but they can only edit their own. And then there's readers, and the readers can't create anything in an application, but they can read what they have access to. So let's jump out here for a second. And I'm going to go over to the DocOva website, and if I click on the platform menu item here in the flexible security on our website, you can go here, and this just shows a little snippet of the way that security in DocOva is. So if we have a look here, I'm just going to zoom this up a little bit. If we have a look here at this image on the right hand side, we can see the square in the middle. You'll see the orange square on the outside says instance, then workspace, applications, records, and fields. And so in DocOva, you can manipulate the security for the whole instance of DocOva. Then on the workspace of DocOva, and then, as you dive down inside, the applications in DocOva have their own access control lists, and then records or documents inside DocOva. And that's what we're going to mostly look at right now by putting fields onto forms, certain fields, the authors, readers, and names field. You're going to be able to manipulate the security on a document level in terms of who can create, who can edit their own, who can read what. And then you can even go to the field level topic of a security video, but right down to the field level, or even sort of section level. So you can have sections of a document that are access controlled. Now, this is real access control. We're not talking about hiding or showing things depending on your role or your username or what have you, or your access. So for example, in a subject matter in the future too, we're going to go over subforms. So in forms, you can have subforms, and those subforms can be created on the fly or come into a document on the fly, or they can just be a static piece of a form, so that you could have the same sort of fields on multiple forms. So fields on a subform that appear in multiple different forms in an application, for example, or there can be a formula which determines whether or not that subform shows up as part of a form, depending on your role or your access control and stuff like that. That's a different subject that we'll get into in the future. Okay. So what I'm going to do here now is, so here there's the instance and stuff. Oh, and then on the left-hand side here, we're going to talk about administrators, managers, developers, editors, authors, readers, no access, and roles in an application. So we're just going to touch on that for a second, but mostly we're going to be talking about authors and readers with these fields. And then on the right-hand side of this image here, you can see it says Office 365, DocOva Directory, Active Directory, Domino, and any LDAP, OAuth, SAML type of, so that's just DocOva has its own directory. That means it has its own directory of users. and you can manage access for users in DocOva's own directory, but DocOva can also use a lot of other directories. So Azure Active Directory, or any LDAP directory, and so on and so forth, right? So you don't have to just use DocOva's, and you can use a combination. So you can have DocOva, authenticating users through Azure Active Directory, for example, but have external customers coming into your to an application on your platform through DocOva's directory and have the users in there. So there's a whole thing there to talk about. But I just wanted to give you this quick overview of sort of the access control that surrounds DocOva's platform and users and the components of an application. Okay, so let's jump over and have a look in, again, the Element Demos application, which is available out of the App Store. So add it through the App Store and you can follow along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up from the form elements here. I'm going to open up, so here you'll see names, authors, and readers. So if I open up the names menu item here, it opens up the names view. And you'll see I have one document here. And pretty simple, I have one column of information from this document. So if I open the document, you'll see here, I'll just read off what this says here. It says the names field element automatically looks up values from the directory identified in global settings. So in a global settings, so the admin of DocOva, you say this instance of the DocOva, these are the directories to use. So by default, there's a type ahead lookup names value, but you can also use a button, and that's what they're saying. This is what we're saying in here. So let's, instead of just looking at that, let's create a new one just to see what it's like. So here, if I type into this field, so this is a names field, and it automatically has type ahead in it. So if I start typing Ryan, my last name, you'll see that it starts to find the users that match Ryan. I actually have two IDs or two profiles in this instance of DocOva. One is my Azure Active Directory profile, and the other one is an LDAP directory that we use with HCL notes. And when you add that, and I'm going to add Gary there too, since we saw him, as I type ahead. So I add Gary in too. You can see that these usernames show here, and you can take them away just by hitting the little X there. So that's all built-in functionality, nothing for you to do there. The next one is the same type, except I can click on this button and I can get a listing of all the people or all the users in a particular directory. So in this particular directory, I'm just going to choose this user, Dave. And so you can also choose to have a single selection, so you can select one person, so select one name, or you can select multiple. And so there's the ability to, select many people at once and delete many people at once, for example, if you need that kind of functionality. By default, when you're using the names field, it displays what is called, it's kind of techie now, the fully distinguished name, right? So that's the common name, organizational unit, the domain, I can't remember what that's called, so like the .com or whatever it is. So that is the fully accessible name. It's the fully sort of tech name of it. But then we also have functions that allow you to show just the abbreviated name. So this is an example here of my username abbreviated, and then the common name. So this is my username and the common version of it. And so DocOva allows you to leverage all parts of those. So if your application needs to take advantage of the organizational unit of a person's username or whatever, those are all available. And so let's jump over to the design of Element Demos. And let's go to the forms. Again, I'm going to go through the process of finding the forms and everything. So there's F author we'll probably look at, but I'm just going to go to F names, just so that you can see the name of the forms with what I'm demonstrating to you. So here's the fnames form that I just demonstrated to you. And so if I click it, so you can see I didn't even rename these fields. I drag and drop these fields onto the form, and I click on them, and on the properties on the right hand side here, I left the field name to be text input 1. And then in here I gave it the names role. And that gives me a few elements here, whether it's editable, computed, we talked about this before, computed for display, or computed when composed. So you can do all those things with these fields. And they are basically text fields with the special role property of names. What the alignment is, all the type of the typical type of text field properties, and then you have some options that are specific to names fields, authors, and readers fields. One of them is a directory lookup. We're not using that here, and display as we're not doing any of that. So for the display as and for the just by virtue of saying names, it already knows the functionality to give to that field. So again, when I click on this, you'll notice that I didn't select the directory lookup or anything like that. I just said, what is the typical. So as I start to type something, that's all built in because I just said it was a names field. There's nothing more that you have to do. And it will show you the abbreviated version, and that's what it'll use by default. So you can translate that to use the common name and stuff like that instead. So let's go and look at a couple more here. So the lookup dialog, so that one is here when I create, and I click, this comes with this button beside it, and when I click the button I can see the directory of groups and all the individuals for a particular directory, whether that's your Azure Active Directory or the Domino Active or some other directory. So if you want to present it that way, all you have to do is on the right hand side here, you check the directory lookup so that you put a button beside it. So DocGovo will generate the code that puts the button beside your names field so that you can see a listing of the directory. And then the fully distinguished name and stuff. This is the display as fields for names fields. And so you'll see the fully distinguished name, the abbreviated name, and the common name, which I already went through with you. Okay. Next form to open up. Let's go and open up the authors form. So it's in alphabetical order. So here it is here. I'm going to open that up. And again, this is just authors fields or a few fields that I put on here. It's exactly like the names field, but the authors field is special, as I mentioned before. Once you check or select authors, you get the exact same properties as you get with a text field and a names field, except it has a special property so that if you go, and I'm going to move my little picture over a bit, if you go to the properties of the application and you go to the security settings, you'll see in here that there's some usernames that are added. And so this user named ITTest2, it's just a testing ID. That user is a user type person. And if you need a refresher on security, there's already a video that goes through the properties here. But the access is author access right here. And so what happens is author access to the application, to the database itself, right here, as well as having an author's field on your form for the documents that you create, together create a special sort of security option for your application. So if I create a document in this application and my name, so I'm in the database as an author, and my name is in an author's field on a document, by virtue of having a field on that form, then when that document is saved, the next time you go to open it, DocGovo knows that I'm an author in the application and my name is listed in an author's field on this form. And you can have multiple author's fields on the form and have different people in them, or a group. You can have a list of many people in one author's field. And so as long as you're an author in the application and an author defined on the form through one of these author's fields, you can edit that document, right? And so the two go hand in hand. The difference being that if you're an editor in the database, editors can edit any content. So whether I created the document or not, if I was an editor in the database, I can still edit that document. But if I'm only an author in the database, then I have to be in an author's field on a document in order to be able to edit that document. And so it really allows you to creatively manage the data in your applications. And that can change over time as it goes, as your document or whatever goes through workflow and a business process of some kind. You can have, after a certain department or something approves the content, that they no longer have access to edit the document as it goes on to the next department for approvals or what have you. Those people could then have the role or be a part of a group, or the individuals listed in a names or authors field, not a names field, just an authors field, to be able to edit that document or be that. So you can control who can edit content at different given times. Okay. So this is just an example of authors fields and just showing the fully distinguished, abbreviated, and common versions of the name again. Oh yes, one thing I'm going to talk about here for a second is the default value for these fields. So you can see I'm putting a default value of username in here. So we have an extensive formula language. And we have a whole bunch of formulas, and they start with $$ in front of the formula name. And in this case, I'm using a formula that we have called $$ username. And what that does is it returns the current user's username. So on this particular field for the default value, I'm saying use $$ username. So that means when I create this document, or when whoever creates a particular document in that authors field, it automatically puts their name onto that document. So when they save it, they're the ones that can edit it again in the future. Okay, so that's how that works. Pretty neat. I mean, you can get super creative with all of that kind of functionality with workflow and so on, and user experience and stuff like that, because you can put much more onto a form than just fields, right? You can put charts, you can put a lot of other things so that you can then really manipulate the functionality of your application. And then let's find the fReaders field in the forms. Again, it's going to be fReaders form. And again, I'm just going through this with you so that if you're following along on your system, that you can see exactly what I had done to get to some particular function that you're looking for. Okay, so this is the same thing as authors, only it's readers. So if in the access control of the application, you are slotted as a reader, if you can only read a document if you are on that document as a reader. If you're not, or if it doesn't have a reader field, everybody can read. Okay, so that's an interesting or very useful function for manipulating data too. So you can imagine policies and procedures say you can have one group who can create and edit the policies, and then everybody else can kind of just read the policies. But maybe you have policies for certain divisions or certain roles or departments, and so those people could see just their policies, while other people, don't have to see all that content because it doesn't pertain to them or whatever. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. Also things like surveys. If you create a survey application, you can automatically say who can create, who's doing the survey, or you can be anonymous so that you absolutely don't know who filled out a survey. Or if you did like training, like tests, somebody could be writing a test, like a multiple choice test or something, and say they don't have time to finish it, and they save it to come back later, and they're the only ones that can edit it, for example, and so on and so forth. So there's so many ways to use authors and readers fields just to manage the security and the access control of your content. I think that's all I have to say about authors, readers, and names fields for now. Again, I'm going to do a much more deep dive into the security of .gova. So you can see, authors, readers to be part of it, but we'll also go into roles. And one thing I'll say, if I didn't say it already, is authors and readers fields also apply to roles and groups. So you can put roles and groups, not just usernames, into authors and readers fields, and it has the same effect. Okay, so that's it for now. Please subscribe. If you have any comments, please, or questions, leave them below, and hit that like button if you liked it. And I'll see you in the next one.